I really believe that what we want in life, what we truly want in life, is not just to be happy, right? What we want is to have a life of meaning. We want a life, we want to know that our life counts, right? We want to know that, I made a difference, that I was here, that I lived, that that I could reach out and change people's lives. That's what we want.
Today I'm joined by the real-life superwoman, Janine Shepherd, one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. At 24, Janine was Australia's biggest hope for an Olympic gold in skiing, when a horrible accident suddenly shattered her dreams and almost her life. After being told she could never walk again, Janine decided to bring the same fire that won her the nickname Janine the Machine in sports and apply it to life, and has since inspired millions of people around the world to develop resilience and realize that a broken body does not mean a broken person. So Janine, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Max, and what a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
Very, very well deserved. As I was telling you before, and I have to tell you, like, I was watching a TEDx talk, which I'm going to link to for our listeners, and sitting in this coffee shop and just had chills. Like, I had like a tear or two like in my eyes. It was such a beautiful story of like overcoming resilience and then rebuilding yourself after you've been broken completely, both physically and mentally. So to give our listeners a little bit of context to this conversation, can you take us back to that moment at 24 when you were at your prime and you got knocked down?
Yeah, well, I've been an athlete, my entire life, Max. Since I was 6 or 7 years old, I was in track and field, triathlons, marathons, and, I really found my way in cross-country skiing because, as you know, I mean, it's such a grueling sport. And, no Australian, people think, what, Australians, you don't have snow. Well, we actually do. And so I'd done a lot of training with overseas and with, I was invited to train and join the Canadian ski team. And, I was just built for skiing, for cross-country skiing, all my background in track and field and long-distance running. And so I really wanted to do something that no one had ever done before, and that's to really put Australia on the map, in snow sports and in cross-country skiing. And so I was planning to go and join the Canadian team. I was invited to join them in preparation for the '88 Winter Olympics in Calgary. And, I felt like everything I'd trained for my entire life was coming to this moment to really, to shine and excel in cross-country skiing. I loved it. It was so grueling. It's the most aerobic sport that there is. So I was on I was in off-season training on my bike with the Australian ski team, and it was a 6-hour bike ride up into the hills west of Sydney, and about, just sort of 10 minutes to go on the bike ride when I was hit by a speeding truck. And that moment changed my life.
Oh, yeah. So, you talk about the injuries you received a lot, right? But all the, recovery. So can you walk us through that pain that you felt in that moment? And how do you begin then to sort of rebuild your life after you've been shattered, literally physically into pieces?
Yeah, well, just to give your listeners an idea, so I literally left my body at the scene of the accident. I had such extensive injuries. I'd broken my neck and my back in 6 places, 5 ribs on my left side, my right arm, bones in my feet. I had head injuries, extensive head injuries. I had internal bleeding. In fact, I lost about 5 liters of blood, which is, all someone my size would hold. They didn't think I'd survive the ambulance trip to the hospital. They thought I was going to die at the hospital. They got a helicopter. They flew blood in. They thought I wouldn't make the helicopter flight. And then, of course, I spent 6 months in a spinal unit in Sydney. And it was really during that first 10 days when I had what I call my death experience. I left my body, and it's a very unique experience. That's a topic for another podcast. But I didn't want to come back to my body because it was just so badly broken, and I knew that the life, my life as an athlete was over, and that was everything. That's how I defined myself. So I did come back, and I think, just to tell your listeners, when people say, why, well, I had so many people, my parents sitting by my bed, people praying for me. It was just extraordinary, the amount of love that was, pumped into my body. And I also think that was such an incredible opportunity because, the one thing that would wake me up to my true source of strength, my true resilience, was to lose the thing that I thought defined who I was, which was my body. So I came back. I was in a wheelchair. I am a disabled person. I say that I sort of struggle with that word really, but
Yeah.
I have a disability. So I am a walking paraplegic. But I think what people find interesting about my story is that, I got home from hospital. I spent 6 months. I came out in a plaster cast and a wheelchair, and I was told that my life would never be the same again. My athletic life was over, and I was, oh my, talk about rock bottom.
Yeah.
I was at rock bottom, and here's the interesting thing about that is that rock bottom doesn't show you who you are; it shows you who you're not, and it showed me that I wasn't my body, and it was really at the point of letting go and accepting where I was and saying, okay, life, then if I can't do that, bring it on. What can I do? And I think it was in that moment, and this is where it gets really interesting, sitting outside in my wheelchair and looking up, and an airplane flew over, and I had this ridiculous thought. I had this thought like, okay, well, if I can't walk, then maybe I can fly. And that moment changed my life.
Yes, I love that story, and the insight that I want all our listeners to walk away from with this is like, if you can come back from this, like one of the arguably most difficult things you can possibly experience in life, right? Where like the entire identity gets taken away, right? Then all of the struggles and the problems that most of us face on a daily basis, even the sort of quote unquote big ones compared to normal stuff, are easily quote unquote overcome. I've had it, multiple times. I've been the same thing, athlete my whole life, ran for the national team in Germany. And I remember I had all of these, injuries and sicknesses as well, right? And oftentimes they would get me so down. But now, like, just listening to your story, right, it's like, it just puts things into perspective, like how much worse it can get and you can still overcome. So talk to me about, this process of rebuilding yourself. Like you mentioned, you saw that airplane, right? And you had this epiphany almost, it sounds like, of like, I want to fly, right? But how do you sort of recreate the new identity for yourself?
Inch by inch, right? You know the old saying, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So, it was so crazy. People were, you wanted what? So I was taken out to the airport and lifted into an airplane for the first time. And even the people at the flying school thought I was crazy.
Yeah, now,
I'm going to fast forward and tell people that it was crazy. I didn't even know whether I would pass a medical at that stage. I had to learn to walk again, but that was my incentive then. Like, okay, now I was so filled, this fire inside me was just, it was extraordinary. I was like, that's it, I'm going to fly. And so, suddenly I had a reason to get out of bed. Suddenly I had a reason to keep living. And, I did. I eventually, my mum helped me get to the pool where she'd put me in the water and I could swim. And, I threw myself into rehab, and having been, an athlete and my background is in sports science. So I had a really good understanding of my body. And I just, I every day I would write in my diary, I would visualize myself walking. I would, I just threw myself into it with the same vigor that I did before, Janine the Machine.
Yeah.
But this was, now I was redirecting it somewhere else. And, I did go on. I got my private pilot's license. I went on and got, unbelievably, my commercial pilot's license.
Yes.
I got my instructor rating, my aerobatics rating, and then I became an aerobatics flying instructor, teaching other people how to fly an airplane upside down, which, I'm a walking paraplegic, so I can tell you that I got a few strange looks from people when they saw me,
I bet.
Limping down to the aircraft. So, it was my freedom. It was just such an incredible sort of metaphor for life, so people ask me why I chose flying, and I really tell them that I didn't. I think flying chose me. It was this inspiring moment of this is the moment of freedom. It was so far from being paralyzed in a spinal ward. And, I'd say that flying gave me my life back. And, it's people always, look, people write to me all the time, email me all the time, and they say, I don't know what I'd do if I lost my ability to do X, Y, or Z, because so often we define ourselves by things that are outside of us. But, when we sort of let go and yield to life, that's when we're open to the possibilities. We have no idea what life has in store for us, or the incredible, potential of what we can do in life. And to me, that's what, now I teach resilience. And when people ask me what that is, I say it's a way of life. It's a journey, not a destination. It's resilience is a really bold and a gritty and a courageous way of living life. And essentially it's a yes. It's saying yes to all of life. And that's what I did. And that's, I think, that's how I was able to really turn my life around, to say, okay, I can't cherry pick the experiences. I'm going to take all of it, the good, the painful, and the joyful. And that's how I was able to recreate my life.
I absolutely love that. And I can literally talk at you, feel this fire that you've again developed in your life. And there's such a power, I find, over and over again in having a dream and having something that almost pulls you towards it, where you just can't stop yourself. Like you say, the dream almost chooses you, right? Like you find that thing and you just can't stop yourself from going after it. And I find there's such a power in deciding to commit to that. Like even if, like you say, it's unrealistic, right? It's crazy to everybody else. But what I find is like the process is going after it. First of all, it makes you happy. And secondly, it also inspires others to do the same.
Oh, absolutely. You're so right there. I was at this flying school when I was learning to walk, and mind you, I had to learn to use a catheter because I'm a paraplegic. So I had all these injuries, and, I was in a plaster body cast, and then I was in a brace, and learning to walk and fly at the same time. And people would stare at me and look at me and think, oh, you're never going to be able to do this. But I had this fire in my belly that was just saying, just keep going, don't even think about that, just keep going. And I threw myself into it, and it's at the time it was sort of all I had, and it was my inspiration to, as I said, get out of bed and keep working on myself. And it's been such an extraordinary journey. And in turn, you're right. When we're out there living our dreams, what happens is that other people see us doing that, and they think, oh, if they can do it, then I can do it too. And that's how it works, because we're all so connected and we're all lifting each other up at the same time. And, life, so often in life we're looking and comparing ourselves to everyone else's life, where if we just focus on what we're doing, we have this incredible, what I call defiant spirit inside of us, which is what Viktor Frankl talks about. He talks about this defiant human spirit, and that's what it is. It's this spirit, this fire inside of us that helps us overcome any challenge in life, anything.
I love this collective, almost like drive, right? Where like you bring people together, and it's like more a community of people raising each other up, right? That's what I found is like one of the most powerful things you can find. And you mentioned something really interesting before about, having a training plan, right? Because like this is something, we as athletes, we notice, right? It's like Monday is this workout, Tuesday is this workout, right? But what I found is that like many of like the most successful people in the world have the same mindset and apply it to every other area of their life, right? Meaning, okay, every week I have like a date night with my spouse, right? That's that training plan for your relationship.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great way
I do like
to put
3
it.
hours of sales calls every day, right? Like they get, happiness rituals. I do meditation 20 minutes a day. Like they apply the same mindset. So is that something that you still do to this day? Like apply this mindset of like being an athlete to your life?
Oh, absolutely. Although it's changed, of course, because I'm not out running or training. But I do the same. And I've learned a lot about how to create a life of well-being. I say to people, I don't chase happiness, because I think happiness is something that it's a very difficult word to sort of like hone down, because there's this drive, particularly I live in the US right now, and there's this pressure of you've got to be happy, and I say no, you have to be whatever you are. You be happy when you're happy and sad when you're sad, because there are times, let's take the pressure off. There are times in life when it's appropriate to be sad, right? Life is about loss. It's about handling those emotions. It's about embracing every emotion and still creating a life that is rich and meaningful, because there's no bad emotion. I mean, we're all going to experience loss in life, but what we can do, in my mind, is create a resilient life. And that's being able to handle all of those things and still be able to create a life of meaning. I really believe that what we want in life, what we truly want in life, is not just to be happy, right? What we want is to have a life of meaning. We want to know that our life counts, right? We want to know that, I made a difference, that I was here, that I lived, that I could reach out and change people's lives. That's what we want. I truly believe that. And so, to me, resilience is the most important skill. It's the most important skill in life.
Yes, I love what you're saying here about creating meaning, right? So how I define happiness is like I combine sort of the two aspects of it, right? Like the emotional part, right, of just, oh, I'm feeling happy today, right? But that's not true happiness, right? Like happiness needs this part of meaning and purpose and going above and beyond ourselves, right? It's like the way I always define it is how I feel about myself when I'm by myself. When I'm just lying in bed, when there's like no distractions, no TV, no people, because in that moment you can't lie to yourself. Right? In that moment, you're just faced with who you really are. And I love what you're saying here about really like focusing on serving the world and helping others become better and chasing that rather than just, the good feeling, right?
Oh, exactly. Like the hedonistic sort of happiness. I mean,
yes.
I think that for me anyway, my happiness is more like a contentment of knowing that I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, that I'm, living my sort of sacred contract. And that's how I would define happiness, and I think that my advice to people is, don't spend too much time on social media, when you're comparing, your life with others. Just be really focused, run your own race, stay in your own lane. And that's that's the best way to really connect with purpose. I was told I would never have children, and by the way, I've got 3 beautiful children, and so they're in their 20s now and living extraordinary lives, and so I see a lot of the pressure on younger people now in trying to sort of chase a life that maybe isn't their life, authentically their life. So, and that's the danger of course, being sort of so connected in a world where we sort of looking at everyone else. So, really just being really mindful of, what gives me joy, what makes me, what brings me to life, what creates meaning for me, because they're the important questions we need to ask.
Yes, 100%. And so you mentioned resilience before. It's really, and I totally agree that this is arguably like the most important life skill you can ever develop. So what do you teach your children, for example? Like, what do you teach them about resilience to really enable them to thrive at life?
Well, I'm just, I have 3 incredibly resilient kids, and I think they're resilient because what research is telling us now, that we learn resilience from the people that we're closest to. So for parents that are wondering, how do I teach that to my children? I say, well, just create that in yourself. Create the tools of resilience in yourself, and your kids are watching you closely, so they'll naturally become resilient. And I know that that's true because my kids are incredibly resilient. I've created, I have a course I'm about to launch soon to help people, what I call build an unshakable core. And if anyone wants, some free tools, there are some free tools on my website. There's a resilience checklist. There's something that I call the question method. And I'm also going to be offering other tools to help people create that resilient mindset. And I've put together what I call a breakthrough course to help people, which is based on neuroscience, neuroplasticity, positive psychology, spiritual wisdom, and my own experience. I've put together what I call a breakthrough course that will help people create an unshakable core to be able to handle whatever challenge they have in life.
So how do people go about doing that? If you could just give us real quick some tips on like, first of all, how would you define this unshakable core? And then how do people go about really creating that?
I've created 5 precepts, which is a way of looking at life. So, for example, when I used to teach people to fly, one of the we have a formula in flying: attitude plus power equals performance. So, our attitude is the way in an airplane is what we see out the front of the airplane. So our attitude is the way we see life. We're all going through life creating a story. when we ask ourselves, is that story actually true? Everything's a story, right? We form from our belief, our judgments, our opinions. We create a story around and meaning around something. So the first thing is I've created 5 precepts, which I say is a way of seeing life. So that sets the scene, for the 12 pillars that I've created of resilience. And I take people through these pillars. They start from acceptance, and they go through all of the virtues in life: acceptance, compassion, optimism. It goes right through to values and strengths, for example, mindfulness, humor, connection, and gratitude. So I take people through these exercises, and as I said, there's some free tools on my website. So I'm really happy for them to go and download those as well. And one of the you asked, Max, about what's one of the first things people do. Well, the first thing I would say to people is recognize that you already are resilient. The fact that you're here, right, means that you've already overcome so much in life. Would you agree?
Love that. Yes.
We are resilient. And often people think other people are resilient, but I say, look at yourself. So, go back and think about something in your life that was really challenging, that you thought you wouldn't be able to get through, a hill that you thought you wouldn't be able to climb, and write that down. What's that event? Maybe it's breaking up with a partner. You've got dumped by a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You lost your job, financial challenge, whatever it is, health problems, and then write down. And I say write down because journaling is a great way to process things in our brains rather than typing on a computer. And then ask yourself, how did I feel? What did I go through? And then, and the next question, what was the process I used to get over that? What the steps I took? Did I reach out to people? Did I do a course? Did I meditate? Did I, whatever it was. And then the most important question is, WTGIT, what's the gift in this? Or what did I learn from this? Now, if you can look at those sort of 4 questions, and that's also what I have a transformation exercise that goes through that process. And it's also based on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, because everything is a repeating pattern in life. Everything. We're continually put through these challenges to go through this process and learn. And once you see that it's a process, it makes it easier to handle the next one. Oh, okay, this is where I am. Can I use those same tools? What can I do to get over this? And what's the wisdom I took from this? And for anyone, and I know you mentioned this, that's seen my TED Talk, 5 chairs on a stage, that's based on the hero's journey. And I had a name for each of those chairs. And the middle chair, of course, was the chair of acceptance. And you'll find that every challenge you go through in life, whatever hill your listeners are facing right now, ask yourself, where am I in that process? What stage am I at? And can I use the wisdom from that past experience to help me through this one?
I love this so much because, like you say, every one of our listeners you've already gone through so many challenges in your life. You've already climbed so many hills. So just remembering that, and then, like you're saying, creating this insight around what did I do in the past, right? What has served me well? What can I, repeat again in the current moment and current situation and bring that to the sort of forefront of your mind. So I absolutely love that. Now, One thing I've been dying to ask you is, like, I'm obsessed with this idea of memento mori, so remembering death. Is that, since your accident, is that something that you actively keep in your mind and that you sort of use to live a better life?
Well, you know what? I think, knowing that having the experience that I've had of leaving my body has certainly helped me how to live. And, a lot of people ask me, well, tell me about that experience. And I say, well, I came back to my body to show people how to live in this life. And this is what's important. So bring everything you have into making this life count. Because my belief is that, we have multiple lives. And it was an extraordinary experience. To me, it's comforting for me because I wasn't alone on that experience. I was guided through that experience. And so I know that this is not all there is. And I take great comfort from that. But I also know that I came back to this body because this was my opportunity to advance myself spiritually, mentally, physically, in whatever way I can. So I see it as a gift. It was a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely love that. Now, if you could give our listeners one challenge to, to walk away from this interview and build more resilience in their lives with, what would that be?
Well, I would say, firstly, my mindset is loving the hills. I learned that as a young athlete. I learned to train on the hills, and that's where I got my nickname, Janine the Machine. So the hills in life are not, obviously not just physically, physically the physical hills that were outside, but the challenges. What's your hill? I would say, what's your hill right now? Just take a moment and think about it. Is it financial? Is it relationships? Is it in your work life? What is your hill right now? And then ask yourself, what's one thing I can do today to help me get over that hill? And then do that one thing. And then get up tomorrow and ask yourself that very same question. What's one thing? And then do that thing. And do that every single day. And before you know it, you'll be over that hill. It's that simple.
And the beautiful thing is that you build resilience by being resilient, right? I think this is an important thing to remember, right? That resilience isn't just going to show up on your doorstep, but you have to show courage to become courageous. You have to be resilient to, become a resilient person.
Yeah. And you know what? People say to me, oh, it's okay, you're really resilient. And I say, look, I'm not resilient despite my accident. I'm resilient because of my accident.
Wow.
Start where you are.
Mindset. Yeah. Yes. Now, Janine, before I ask my final question, where can listeners connect with you online?
Oh, well, they can, of course, go to my website, JanineShepherd.com. They can join up for the, my course, The School for Resilience. On the Learn tab, there's some free downloads of PDFs of the question method and resilience checklist. They can connect with me on Instagram, Janine_Shepherd, Twitter @Janine Shepherd, and LinkedIn, of course, as well, Janine Shepherd. And Facebook.
I link to that. Now, final question. What is your quest for greatness? So what's that big vision, the fiery thing inside of you that you want to bring to life?
I just want to continue to share my story, which is why I came back, and to encourage people to share theirs too, because that's what we need. We need to know that we're not alone on this journey. We are all connected, as you know from my TED Talk, by a sea of invisible straws. So raise your straw, share your story.